Let's go to the SEC. Let's talk about Alabama versus Georgia. The line was 5.5 when we were picking. I believe it dropped down to 4.5. It opened at 6.5. So people were continually betting Bama, apparently for the right reason. Bama gets it done 27-24. I'm not going to say Alabama played the best game either, but they played a very, very good game on defense, and they got enough done on offense to get it done.
Yeah, this
So,
team just like we talked about it with Washington and that defense getting stops when they needed it, and that team in general. Like this is a Bama team that just like in the second half, and especially honestly in that first half, I thought when Georgia just cut through them, right, like a hot knife and butter, boom, went down, touchdown, and then Bama went 3 and out. They responded so well, right? We're stopping Georgia, and then giving their offense a chance to just hang in the game. And once Milroe got settled in, they figured out, oh, like Georgia's running this weird like 2-man spy group, whatever it is, like, and try to figure out how to do that. And credit to Bama's coaching staff, right? Tommy Reese and Kevin Steele. We talked about this in our preview where like this is a really well coached Bama team, right? And like Georgia's got great coaches in general. Like, right, they're obviously loaded there, but like the coordinator improvement, right, from last year to this year, I thought was just massive and couldn't. This is a perfect game, and the whole season is a very, laid off for you where they struggled early and they just continue to get better and better and better. And to me, that's a sign of good coaching and good culture. And obviously, those two things that Bama historically has had, right, in their best years of the dynasty. But it sounds like they got those two things right again, which is really dangerous to see with a team that talented to be able to go out and do that.
yeah. I'll play a little devil's advocate, though. There were a couple of things that needed to go right for Alabama that went right. You look at uh, turnovers in key situations. That Carson Beck, the reverse, that looked like it had some room there.
Yeah.
The missed transfer on the handoff, Alabama jumps in that. And now they only got a field goal out of it. But, I mean, Alabama won by a field goal, right? And also Georgia. I mean, look, who knows if they would have been moving the ball. Also, that Isaiah Bond catch that on that fourth
Yeah.
down probably should have been reviewed. If we're being serious, probably should have been
Yeah.
reviewed. I think it was not a catch, but overall, still Bama gets it done. And look, we'll talk more about the college football playoffs. But if you are talking about someone who deserves based on their resume, right? If you were to just not see the other teams, right, and you were to just look at a blind resume of the teams that this team beat, and even the loss to Texas, right? But if you knew that Texas was in the college football playoffs as well and won their respective conference and only had one loss, you'd say that that's a playoff caliber team, wouldn't you not? Would you not? I mean,
Yeah. Yes. And yes, absolutely.
no, that doesn't necessarily mean. I mean, we'll have time to talk about that later. But Georgia pulls Florida State in the Rose or the Orange Bowl. That'll be an interesting game. Florida State's gonna be pissed off at the SEC. Georgia's gonna be pissed off that they didn't make it to the playoffs either. Those are two angry teams playing in the Sunshine State there. And Bama's playing Michigan round one. Probably not the team that Michigan wanted to see round one, based on
You
the
saw that.
reactions of their watch party.
Come on.
But I mean, look,
Can I say
I
something about
mean,
that? Like, first of all, you got to know that ESPN has cameras in there. Like, everyone has a camera on your watch party. You have to know. Like, there should be an written rule, or just like someone telling you in the locker room, like whoever it is, you have to like do the golf clap of Nick Saban, Alabama, or be like hype about it. Like, yeah, yeah, yeah. You cannot be, oh shit, here we go. We missed out on Florida State. Like, to me, right? And we'll talk about the playoffs anyways, but real quick, like this is why like everyone's frustrated about Florida State. Well, not everyone. A lot of people are frustrated by Florida State. Thing is like you ask the players who they want to play. Do you think Michigan wants to play Alabama or Florida State? And like to me, like that's where like the argument ends. Like, okay, who's actually better? Like, yeah, like the players and coaches, like they know more than the media and these voters and whatever else. But yeah. Anyways, so you
but
can
not more than
continue.
us though. We know things. We know
Well,
things here
yes,
on
and,
this
and
podcast.
obviously the redshirt sophomore is a little bit different, but
Yeah, we know everything about everything, right? Always. So make sure if you guys are listening, make sure you like the video because we know everything, right? I mean, subscribe because we know everything. Follow us on Twitter at the Redshirt Soft because we know everything. We just know things here. But
I do
I
want to say
mean,
about the game though. You mentioned earlier about or you mentioned in our preview like Carson Beck was going to be under fire like he had not been before, and it was going to affect his play. And I thought that was pretty obvious. He only missed 8 throws. He got sacked a couple times, right? And Marius Mims going out early was brutal because you have two edge rushers on both sides
and
that are
Lad McConkey was clearly not healthy at all.
oh yeah, and Brock
Like this
Bowers.
Florida State team, that's gonna get Georgia, they're gonna get a fully healthy Lad McConkey, and they're gonna get a fully healthy Brock Bowers.
Assuming no opt outs, we'll see what happens there. The thing is about the
Well,
bowl
Brock
games
Bowers might, yeah.
is like
I
the
don't
thing
think
is
Lad
well I don't know
McConkey opts out.
yeah, the thing is about bowl games is like you can be upset and you can respond one or two ways. Like to me, Florida State's going to take that anger and use it as a motivation to be like, okay, we got to go embarrass this SEC team and prove that we were actually deserving. Or Georgia's like, we missed out. Like, what's the point of playing? So that's the whole debate. Is like, to be honest, I think like, and as an unbiased, right, I'm a Big Ten guy. Like, I don't have any pull either way, but I'm a college football fan, and like, I think if you want like the sanctity of our sport to continue, right, in terms of lack of movement, like you saw at UCF, like remember when they won and they claimed the national championship, like Auburn, if Auburn had beaten them and handled them, like none of that would have happened. And Georgia can come in and take care of business, right, against Oregon, or I'm sorry, in the Orange Bowl. Obviously, like that'll kind of put the Florida State, defenders, a little bit, a quieter place. But yeah, how do you think that Bama, like does this obviously like they struggled against Auburn, right? And then how different was this week versus a week ago? And like, because you picked Bama to win, like, was this how you thought it was going to play out?
I picked him to
Or
cover. I tried to
oh,
middle
yeah,
it
I'm
there.
sorry,
I did
yeah,
take Georgia to win, but I knew it was gonna be a close game. I just thought 5.5 was too much. Uh, Matchup one. Well, we talked about it in the preview, right? Like Carson Beck, right? They had not seen a defense like this Alabama defense. And the other argument was Jalen Monroe had not seen a secondary like this secondary. And that ended up like kind of proving true to some degree. Now Jalen Monroe had 2 touchdown passes, 193 yards, but they kept him in check a lot of times on the grounds. When they weren't designed runs, right? Like talking about just keeping them, they kept him in the pocket. They had 2 spies almost on him, like every play. Uh, Shout out Roydell Williams for getting done. They executed when they needed to, and that was just key. And then of course turnovers. I mean, just making less mistakes was kind of what it came down to. And it seems like they were ready for it. They had made those mistakes, and they had paid for those mistakes earlier with the loss to Texas, and Georgia had not yet paid for mistakes such as that. So, I mean, I was on Bama just because I thought these were 2 really good teams. I just thought 5.5 was too many points, but I thought Georgia would still probably win the game. And look, if these teams were to play again, Georgia would still be favored. All right, that shouldn't be news to people, right? People might think that's crazy that I'm saying that, but like Georgia will be favored. They're still probably power rated as the #1 team in the country. If you ask a lot of people, I think it might be close. It could be a pick 'em, right? It could be Georgia -1, -2.5. It'll be really close, but like Georgia is still right there as probably the #1, #2 power rated team in the entire country.
yeah. I do want to say this about Bama, especially that run game. We saw Jason McClellan didn't play. Obviously, he got hurt in that Auburn game. I believe it hurt his foot. And I love Jason McClellan. He's a leading rusher, starting running back. I think he's a really smooth runner. I think he's got a bright future in the NFL. But to be honest, this matchup particularly, you mentioned that you love the way Roydell Williams runs the ball. I do too. He's a really, really physical back, downhill runner, gets you extra yards. And a team like Georgia, every yard matters. And you can't be dancing in the holes, looking for creases, like because it's not going to be there. They're so well sound defensively, even with a banged up and a young linebacker core. They're just so well coached and disciplined there. Him and Jam Miller, who I love, Jam Miller. I think he's just a really, really good athlete, right? On in the running game and the passing game, we saw that wheel route, and even on special teams, he's so fun to watch just flying down the field. But I thought like that was not work to their benefit, but like those guys are really good to have in your back pocket there without your starting running back.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think Wardell Williams is that starting running back. I get that Jason McClellan is hurt, but dude, I think Roydell Williams is better. I think he's so good. I'm a big fan of
Yeah,
his, but yeah, this was an awesome game. Of course, I mean we knew it was going to be uh probably the probably the two best, maybe two of the three best teams in the entire country in terms of power ratings. It was awesome. It was an awesome game. So can't wait to see Bama in the college football playoffs, and we'll see what Georgia does. Uh, I guess in this bowl game, pending opt outs. And look, we know that their recruiting class is pretty ridiculous right now, so I expect them to be players. I mean, this is gonna sound stupid, but obviously they're players in in the future, in the next 10 years. Like this Georgia program is a program.
They're not good. They lost their first game in like 30 games, and they're not going to
Yeah,
three-peat. Oh no, like no, Georgia's going to be fine. You mentioned the recruiting. To me, I thought was interesting was how about the former Georgia transfers? Right, make some plays. Burton had the touchdown. Tresman Marshall had the fumble recovery.
yeah,
That was kind of cool to see. I'm sure those guys were fired up about that game. But yeah, you mentioned Georgia will be just fine. It'll be interesting to see what Carson Beck does, right, with his NFL decision. And obviously some other players there will have some key decisions to make. But regardless, they'll reload. They'll be okay.
yeah. One loss I think is pretty big though is Fran Brown going to Syracuse, taking that head coaching job there as
Oh,
well.
he elite
So
recruiter, elite developer there at D-back.
yeah, so we'll see what Georgia has to replace there and how that secondary gets hit in the future. But I'm sure they'll be fine.
Well, yeah, and I was like like Nick Saban had to deal with it. At least Kirby got to see how he handled it. But like you see Dan Lanning going out and doing this thing in Oregon. Like you're like there's gonna be attrition to his staff. Right. And like you saw the offensive coordinators obviously in the NFL now. We'll see how they can handle. I believe in Kirby Smart. I believe in that program and the culture there is really, really sound that they will just plug and chug. But it's something to monitor for sure.
Absolutely.